The day that is universally regarded as the worst on the NFL calendar for the year is upon us. It is cut down day, folks. I'm Glenn Naughton with Jet Nation Radio, jetnation.com. Be sure to log in to jetnation.com where you can register and become a part of what is the most active Jets message board on the web. So I was going to throw a quick 53 together as cuts will start rolling in. And the way this goes, guys, sometimes 15 of them come out right away, like that. And other times it's dribs and drabs. You get one, you get another couple hours later, you get another. So we don't know. Al Blades, safety, has been cut. He wasn't on anybody's 53 at this point, let's be honest. But a guy, I mean, Bloodlines, fantastic. Benny Blades, Brian Blades, dad, uncle, all played in the league. So, and he's a safety. So with the Jets' current position at safety, you can't rule out any of these guys coming back, any safeties who don't make it today. But he is gone. Al Blades, undrafted free agent, who, again, how many safety spots are really, even on a team where they don't have an established bona fide great safety, there's kind of one spot open, right? Davis is making it, you would assume, based on how he played last year, and they didn't play him in the preseason. Adams and Clark are your starters. So there's really not a lot there if you're one of those guys who are trying to make the roster. But basically, I'm going to run down, and this is, I think every year we say it's tough to project a 53, and I can't remember the last time it was this hard, especially on the D-line. O-line, probably not as hard. There are a lot of guys you could keep. There are a lot of guys who would have started for this team in years past. But because of the number of veterans in place, that kind of really only leaves a couple of spots. So even though guys like, you've got Glazer, you've got Laval, who had himself a really nice camp. Of course, Schweitzer, you figure, is going to make it. Glazer and Laval are bubble guys along with Newman. Like, which one of those guys do you keep? And remember, Laval played in the UFL too. So he's a guy that if teams liked what they saw from him in the UFL and then they see what he did with the Jets this preseason, maybe he doesn't make it to the practice squad, because I would imagine if he doesn't make the roster, he is at least a practice squad guy. Maybe he doesn't make it. Maybe a team gives you a 6 or a 7 to trade for him if they like, again, that combination of having played at a high level in the UFL and then having played at a high level, again, only preseason, but teams need linemen all the time. Nobody knows that better than Jets fans after what happened last year. And GM's Island Empire says a lot of teams will be picking up Jets players. I agree. I mean, D linemen, O linemen, corners. I think we're going to see a lot of Jets guys get snagged who don't make this 53. So let me pop over. Make sure I've got Twitter open just to keep up if any cuts come in. If something comes in, guys, while you're watching and I haven't said it, feel free to throw it out there in the chat. Let's see. Yeah, so I'm gonna basically go over and it's like I said, not an easy year to do it. So I'll go over what I had. I think Isaiah Reddick, Hassan Reddick is going to be in camp or is going to be with the team for week 1. That's my expectation. I just don't think the guy's going to want to give up game checks. If he's that dug in to where he's willing to give up some game checks, all right. So right now I've got him in yellow off to the side, not taking up a roster spot, but I fully expect him to. I'd raid the Bengals roster for Tanner McLaughlin. I would also explore the back end of the Packers roster for a wide receiver. This time of year is so, and I've heard, I've listened to Rick Spielman, the former Vikings GM, and he's talked about how this isn't just a bad day for the obvious reasons where you're telling guys that their journey may be over. It may not. Some of these guys will get cut. They'll catch on somewhere else. And you want them to keep working and all that. But for some of these guys, this will be it. So to sit a guy down in your office and say, hey, this might be the last stop for you. Time for you to find something else to do with your life. Again, not the case for every guy, but some. So you have that aspect of it, which is tough. But there's also the fact, what Spielman points out, is the thousands of names that you're going through. I mean, 32 teams, not obviously you're not worrying about your own guys, but 30 some teams, so around 1,000 names of guys that you're pouring over with your pro personnel department. You know, are there any guys on here who we like better than our guys? And maybe you do, but you're like, damn, we just spent, some of these guys might be guys who you signed to a futures contract when last year ended. And you think we've been developing this guy all offseason. He's done a nice job. He's made nice strides. He's done everything we've asked him. But here's another guy we like better, and he just came loose. Now we got to cut this guy who we like. Apologies for that one. I have a maniac dog on the loose. So when you get these guys who you've taken all this time and effort to develop, and then you got to let them go. So that makes it tough. Not just the front office guys, the coaches. You're a coach who's been working with a dude, developing him, and now he's got to leave because another team has another guy that they didn't like enough, but you like more than they do. So it's tough. It's tough all around. Nobody likes it, but it is what it is. So as I'm going through this 53, I'm having a really hard time. And I have if anyone says there's no way that guy makes it, there's no way this guy makes it, I'm open to being wrong on a lot of these. Because there are a lot, maybe not a lot of spots, but a lot of players, because there are some spots where there are 4 or 5 guys I could see making it, but there's only one spot. But any of them making it would be fine. Like Braden McGregor, Eric Watts. If either one of those two make it, fine. Will they both? Highly unlikely. And Jalen Holmes is a factor. He's a guy, honestly, I've kind of slept on because I'm looking at this team and thinking, how do they replace John Franklin Myers? And kind of thinking Eric Watts has had a really good camp. He's similar in size to JFM, maybe, and I've kind of been focusing on him as the guy who could replace John Franklin Myers. But then you look at the camp Jalen Holmes had, and I mentioned this, I think, on the last show. He's had a really good camp, and same size, height, weight compared to JFM. They're within a few pounds of each other. The Jets have been playing him inside and outside, and he did show a little bit last year. Late in the season, he got some reps. He looked pretty solid. So a guy who I'd kind of discounted in my mind as like, all right, Jalen Holmes is a veteran journeyman. He's been in the league 5 years, only got a couple of sacks. He's not going to make the team. It's sort of the preconceived notion I had. But as I'm watching him, I'm thinking this guy, he's got absolutely has a shot to make the team. But do you leave him on? Do you take him off? Who comes off? So it's a fun exercise, though. We do enjoy it every year. Even we're going to have our hits and our misses. Elon says, I mentioned that. Raid the Bengals. Is McLaughlin, are they letting him go? And also Packers for a wide receiver. Honestly, I've been so hyper-focused on the Jets situation, I haven't really looked around at who has what in terms of depth. Elon says, not a fan of Charles or Brownlee. I'm a Brownlee guy. Charles, I've kind of shifted on him a little bit just in the last 48 hours, because I've said all along, the second Hardy was let go, my belief was that was because Irv Charles surfaced and just emerged as an elite special teamer, that he was going to take that spot and save the Jets a couple million and without much of a drop off, if any. But now as I think about it and I watch a couple of these preseason games and I see how the kickoff game has changed, I'm like, do you really need that guy with the same skill set from a gunner that you needed before, when a guy had to cover the whole field and sometimes beat multiple blockers on his way down the field? That's a skill you've got to have. But now with everything so condensed and in a tight space, I'm like, maybe you really don't. Maybe you don't have to have that Irv Charles, that Justin Hardy. And I could be wrong. We've not seen what teams are going to do, how they're going to play this thing, but it may just be a little bit less of a factor. Let's see. We don't need a wide receiver if we're expecting to trade for Devontae. The Devontae Adams thing, listen, anybody wants that guy on their team. Money. I mean, the cap is a real thing, right? There's a reason why John Franklin Myers isn't a Jet right now. And that reason is the cap is a real thing. So if you're going to try to get Reddick paid, and you're going to have Sauce and Garrett and these guys coming up next year, that they're not locked. I think Sauce and Garrett next year will want new deals. JJ, Brees, possibly. But, I mean, Sauce is the face of the franchise, and I think Garrett's going to break every team record this year at receiver, and both their agents are going to come knocking. JJ and Brees. Oh, again, Brees, if he has a 1,500-yard season. Anyway, Jets have good players now. So now they have a new problem. How do you pay so many good players? Nice problem to have. Let's see. David says he wants to see McGregor and Taylor get in. 100% agree, David. McGregor, liked him at Michigan. Taylor talked about him during matter of fact, when we did the Dom C's podcast talking prospects during the offseason with the focus on DTs, and we talked about Taylor a little bit as a guy who would go early in the draft, and he obviously went unpicked. Charles isn't necessary when you have good special teams tacklers like Eccles and Stiggers. Yeah, I still think Charles is better than all those guys, but again, it's a matter of I'm not 100% sure that's going to be as essential as it has been in years past. Wild Wave, good to see you, man. Always good to have you join us for a little chat. So let's jump right into the let me just refresh the Twitter real quick, make sure the Jets haven't let anyone else go other than Blades. And they appear not to have. In fact, what I should be doing here, and what you should all be doing, I say it all the time, JetNation.com, most active Jets message board on the web. Somebody has started a thread in the Jet Nation forums where it is going to be a collaboration. It's basically a cut down thread where everybody, the thousands of members who are active on Jet Nation are going to be looking at their Twitters and their team pages and all that, and they're just going to paste all of the cuts in there as they roll in. So Al Blades is at the top right now, nothing beyond that. So that's what I'll be using to refresh. Useful tool, useful thread. That's why Jet Nation is amazing. So without further ado, my 53, for what it's worth, Aaron and Tyrod at quarterback. Of course, Breece, Braylon Allen, Isaiah Davis, and I got Izzy making it. And I didn't have him on the initial, and that had nothing to do with the way I feel about Izzy as a player. If you remember when they drafted him and I went live, I was having to hold myself down. I wanted to go through the roof. Loved Izzy as a player at Pitt, and was thrilled he came on board with the Jets. I just didn't see them carrying four backs. Once they took Isaiah Davis, I thought the writing was on the wall for Izzy. But I think he showed enough to make it. And if he doesn't, I don't think he's making it to the practice squad. I think another team will swoop in and scoop him up. Not a lot of changes from my initial. Izzy is one of them. The other one is that I no longer have Irv Charles making it, having thought about the gunner and the new kickoff setup. So my receivers are Garrett Wilson, Mike Williams, Malachi Corley, Xavier Gibson, Jason Brownlee, Alan Lazard. Lazard should be higher than that. It's not depth charty, but it kind of is. So those are the wideouts. I think Gibson, and something important to remember. I've seen a lot of people say Gibson hasn't done anything this preseason. Corley hasn't done anything this preseason. We've talked about the fact that teams are no longer using preseason games the way they used to. And a lot of these guys, a lot of these reps that they're getting with the starters, these are happening in the joint sessions. And Jason Brownlee, was it against the Commanders, I believe, had a couple of touchdown catches against the Commanders starters. Corley sounds like he was doing more in those head-to-head meetings than he did in the preseason. I mean, here's the thing with Corley that's tricky that makes him rare as a wide receiver and evaluating him in the preseason. He's a guy who we know is going to make a living early on with the short stuff, the quick hitters, the tunnel screens, stuff like that. And he doesn't have the starting lineman getting out in front and trying to block for him. So we're not really getting a true look at his strengths, the way you might another receiver who might have a more advanced route tree and they're trying to win downfield against DBs, whereas Corley's primary thing early on is going to be catching the ball and beating guys, using his blockers and then, finding a seam and running a guy over, Yak King, right? So that kind of, you're not getting an opportunity to really see what he can do. Same with Xavier Gibson. I felt like we saw Xavier Gibson's name a fair bit in some of these joint sessions with the plays he was making. And then the real games, or not the real games, but the preseason games would start and you'd have you'd have Peasley and Martinez, and these aren't guys who are going to be on the roster throwing them the football. So I'm not as worried about the Brownlee and Gibson lack of production in preseason games that some people might be. Tight ends, I've got Conklin, Ruckert, and Kenny Yeboah. No real surprise there. I'm going to throw in a handful of practice squad guys who I think can, because, that's where you're going to see teams probably carry 10, 11, 12 of their own guys, but they're going to add 4 or 5 guys from around the league to their practice squad that get let go by other clubs. Left tackle, I've got Tyron Smith, of course, Olu backing him up, John Simpson at left guard, Schweitzer backing him up, Joe Tippmann at center with Schweitzer or Newman backing him up, depending on what they want to do. AVT at right guard, and then at right tackle, Morgan Moses, Max Mitchell, Carter Warren. Carter Warren, by the way, was just talking about him. Was just talking about him with some of the guys in a Jets chat group we've got with fans over in Ireland, and the Jets only had 2 linemen this preseason who had more than 20 pass block reps and didn't allow a single QB hit, pressure, sack. Chris Hansen, only 23 for him, I believe, and Carter Warren with 54 pass block reps managed to not allow a single QB hit, pressure, or sack. Carter Warren, I think, had himself a good camp, a good preseason, played well in games. Again, obviously the performance in the games, the pass blocking was I said Chris Hansen. That's the guy from the catcher. No, Jake Hansen. I said Chris Hansen. Anyway, moving along. If you know who Chris Hansen is, fans in the U.S., you know who I'm talking about. If you don't, Google him. He's done some pretty impressive work. But he gets to hang around. Or sorry, I don't have him. We'll get to him. I actually don't have him on the roster. He was like 54th guy, right? Like there's a few guys who I had on and took off and had on and took off. And basically Hansen got bummed. As I said at the top, right? You've got Newman, you've got Hansen, you've got Laval. These guys played really well on the interior. But I think Schweitzer, being the veteran, I think he manages to stick. But then again, at the tackle spots, I think Max Mitchell far exceeded most people's expectations this camp. Again, I get it. It's only camp. But Max Mitchell did a really nice job, and so did Carter Warren. I think both those guys stick, so they've got 5 tackles on the roster, which isn't a bad thing given Tyron Smith's history. Morgan Moses has been somewhat of an Iron Man, or has been an Iron Man up until last year with that pec injury. So as guys get older, you start seeing, even if it's one significant injury, it seems to be more significant when you throw in a guy's age. So that's the offensive side of the ball. On defense, again, Hassan Reddick for the moment is off to the side. So at defensive end, edge, we're going to go with Jermaine Johnson, Will McDonald, Tack McKinley, Braden McGregor. And this is the dilemma, folks. I'm putting Michael Clemens on my 53. But I'm basing it on the fact that this are the Jets. And some teams do this more than others. Some teams will do everything in the world to not cut a draft pick any earlier than they have to. Put it this way, if this were up to me, I would take Jalen Holmes over Michael Clemens. I think the Jets are going to go with Clemens because he's a pick. Zero surprise if they don't, and they go with Jalen Holmes. He's a really tough guy. I'm tempted to do it myself and say, you know what, Michael Clemens isn't making this team, but I will, because I'm looking at what I think they're going to do, not necessarily what I would do. So there are your DN guys. Now Clemens could be out the door once Reddick comes back, because Tack McKinley has been playing lights out. And listen, Tack McKinley's a former first-round pick, folks. Yes, things went poorly for him after a couple of solid years to start his career. Is he one of these guys who needed a little bit of a wake-up call, a little bit of time away from the game to recommit himself? He's been fantastic. And then the final spot, Braden McGregor. And I'm only giving it to McGregor because I think he gets poached. I don't think he makes it through waivers. And I think he's done too much. He's played too well to not keep on the roster. Best pass rusher on the team this preseason. And, go watch him at Michigan. He did some good work there. I think he makes it. And if he doesn't, I don't think he makes it to the practice squad. If I'm wrong, wouldn't be the first time. Defensive tackle, Quinnen Williams, Javon Kinlaw, those are your starters. Leki Fotu is going to be your run stopper. Solomon Thomas, solely, again, here's another spot. Me personally, again, I would take Hyatt or Jalen Holmes over Solomon Thomas. He's clearly a Salah favorite, so I don't think he's going anywhere. I know he had 5 sacks last year, which was a career high from him. But I feel like because it was his career high, people are talking about it like he had a 15 sack season. He didn't. And Leonard Taylor is the final defensive tackle that I'm taking. Just going to check the Jet Nation forums again, as I said, because these literally folks are going to put cuts in here the second they happen, if they happen. And we've only got only Blades. Blades is the only one so far. And it doesn't look like anyone else. Here we go. Yeah, it doesn't look like anyone else has been let go since we kicked off. So we did DTs, we did DNs, linebackers. Okay, so here's another spot where I made a change. And I could see, again, I can see the Jets not doing this. I didn't have Surratt on my initial because a couple reasons. Again, one, not a draft pick. Two, durability. And I love Surratt. He's been a big Surratt guy since they picked him up. Liked him at UNC. Liked his brother Sage, who had a catch last night for the Cardinals as a tight end. Played wide receiver at Wake Forest. Both seem like really high character guys, good players. But when I saw Surratt go down early on in that first preseason game, it was just a reminder that he's a guy who hasn't played very much, but he still manages to get hurt a lot. So if the Jets are having that conversation in their room, because we know Saleh loves him. We know that. But again, as you're paring down the roster, you have to take everything into consideration. And Zaire Barnes had himself a really nice camp. They had games where they both were on fire. So I'm keeping both for now. If you tell me they're only keeping one, I have a hard time calling. If they weigh heavily the injury issue, I think they keep Barnes. If they say, you know what, Surratt's been dinged up, but he's never had a major injury, I think they keep Surratt. And Barnes, they try to sneak onto the practice squad. Either one would, if they keep one and not the other, I think the other they try to put on the practice squad. Corner is tough. You got guys, you got Bartholomew and some of these young guys coming from out of nowhere playing really well. But I'm going to go Sauce DJ, Michael Carter, Jarek Bernard, Converse, Stiggers, and Eccles. Now, don't be surprised. I said this earlier. I said it in a tweet. If they put JBC on short-term IR, and that allows them to keep a guy like Bartholomew around for a little bit to continue evaluating him, and then decide when it's time for JBC to come off short-term IR, they decide, have either one of them done anything that will make this hang on, this is list of names off topic, but I did want to touch on this. Just retweeted from our friend Dylan Terriman, who tried to join us this morning, but these time differences, man. He started work. I work nights. I got off a little while ago. This is from Grant Cohn. When the 49ers play their season opener, the following players either won't be on the field or won't be in football shape. That's true. Trent Williams, Brandon Ayuk, Christian McCaffrey, Elijah Mitchell, Talanoa Hufanga, Dre Greenlaw, and Ricky Pearsall. I think we universally agree that the best team on the Jets schedule this year is the 49ers. And I think everyone who follows the NFL would agree with that. You catch them with, and look, the Jets, whether Reddick, they'll either be without him or he won't be in football shape, but that ain't five guys. That's not Trent Williams and Ayuk and McCaffrey. That's a lot. It's a lot to overcome against this Jets defense that is going to come out, flying around. Safeties, we did the corners. Safeties, Chuck Clark, Tony Adams, Ashton Davis. And Isaiah Oliver is another change. I had Jarius Monroe earlier. Oliver, the fact that they signed him, he's a veteran, and they've treated him like a starter this preseason. He's not played. They've put him and Ashton Davis both. Tony Adams, Chuck Clark. We've not really seen any of the safeties. So I think the Jets are set on who their safeties are. But I think Monroe is a guy you put on your practice squad. Specialists, no surprises, Hennessy, Zerline, and Morstead. Jordan Travis, I think, goes to IR. And let's pull up right here. Let's pull up these are just some predictions for the practice squad. Quarterback, and I did a story on this yesterday. Some people reacted surprisingly, were a lot more upset than I thought I would be. But Mike White as QB3, he's been let go by the Dolphins. Explain to me why not. We're talking QB3. We're talking about a guy who look at the number 3 quarterbacks around the league. Mike White might be one of the better ones. Look, Peasley did some nice things. Martinez has some good tools. You want to keep one of those guys on the practice squad and bring Mike White in. White's going to be on the practice squad too. but I have no issue with that. As of this moment right now, I'm saying Peasley on the practice squad. If they don't go out and get a veteran, my preference would be that they go get a veteran. But Glenn, if he plays, that means the season's over. Not if it's a game or two. Again, A-Rod's in his 40s now. Tyrod is not durable. There is a world in which the Jets might need their QB3 to start 2 games. And you'd like to win those 2 games. So why not get Mike White, right? It's this thing where you say a name and people go, well, if that guy's playing, the year's over. Really? So if the QB3 plays 2 games, the season's over? That's it? Like Aaron Rodgers misses 3 games and Tyrod gets hurt during the second one and has to miss the rest of that game and the following week, season's over? I disagree. So I say go get Mike White, but if you don't, if you're going to keep one of the rookies on your practice squad, and again, this is assuming Jordan Travis goes to IR, I think Peasley, I would keep Peasley. I think Adrian Martinez worries me too much with the turnovers. Shamar Bartholomew, I mentioned him a few minutes ago, corner, guy's done a really nice job in camp. I would like to see him hang around for a little while. Again, they have so much depth there. They're not carrying 8, 9, 10 corners. Tanzel Smart, who may be the first ever practice squad Hall of Famer. Look, Tanzel Smart, probably the most, if ever there was a fan favorite on the practice squad, it's Tanzel Smart. I think 3-4 years ago, his first camp with the Jets, I remember tweeting like, this dude Tanzel Smart has some real get off. Like Tanzel Smart's a really good example of a guy that you look at and some of his tools are so good that you just feel like he's got to break through, right? He's like, his get off is high end. He's big enough, but for whatever reason, he's a guy who's like a practice squad / back of the roster D lineman. Again, who does some things well, but not well enough to stick on the 53. But still has some value because he's obviously, really comfortable with his coaches, his teammates, all that stuff. Jarius Monroe, the safety out of he played corner in college. Jets moved to the safety. Jarius Monroe out of Tulane. I initially had him on my 53, but I just don't see that happening now. Lincoln Sefcik, tight end fullback out of South Alabama. Does athletic guy. Didn't see a ton of targets. I think he saw 2 or 3 targets in the preseason. Wrestled the ball away from a defender the other day to pull one down for a 12-yard catch. Good blocker, athletic enough to play. I think he's a guy, if they want to work him as a fullback and tight end, then he sticks. Eric Watts, practice squad, but could be on the, you could roster him, wouldn't surprise me. Cole Laval, who I've mentioned a couple times, you could, I think the only way he makes the roster, I don't see him making the roster. I would like him to. Schweitzer, can you keep him over Schweitzer at this point? I don't know that you can, but I don't know that I would complain if they did. I think they want to have that veteran presence, and Schweitzer brings that. Brady Latham, another lineman, another undrafted guy out of Arkansas. Tough as nails, plays through the whistle, strong hands. Didn't show a ton in preseason, but I think as he's moved from guard to center, he can be sort of a long-term project, so I would keep him around. Jalen Holmes, I put Holmes on the 53 last night, and I just keep bouncing him from 53 to practice squad. Brandon Smith, here's a guy who has been phenomenal when they throw him he's only got 3 or 4 catches, but I don't think any of them have been easy. And a couple of them were pretty circus-like. And you go back and you watch him at Iowa, and he does a lot of that. He didn't have big numbers at Iowa because it was Iowa. But if you go back and watch him, a lot of contested, high point, fingertip grabs, acrobatic, off balance. There might be something there with him, so I think he sticks around. The other corner, who everyone's loved as a return man, Brandon Codrington, I keep him around too. The only reason I don't think Codrington makes the roster, it's just numbers. I think if they really, really needed another corner, he would make it. But I think at least for early on, we'll see Gibson as the punt returner. He was around 10 yards of return last year, 9.7, which isn't elite, but it's better than average return man. And kick returns, I don't know what they're gonna unveil back there. I don't think any team is showing what they're actually gonna do on kick return up to this point. And then Obena Eze, the international pathway player, played at TCU. We talked about him last week. Somebody sent in a question about him. I think he's a protected guy. That's like a bonus spot on your practice squad if you're bringing in an international player to try to grow the game, right? So hopping in the chat real quick, see what I've missed while I've been gone. Let's see. Are you worried about Rodgers? Everyone should be worried about Rodgers' health to some degree. The Achilles, no, it's fully healed. He's had plenty of time, but anytime you enter that age group, it's and I talked about this the other day, right? That was some of my criticism with the Rodgers trade was why did you give up that much? Not only give up that much for a guy that no other team was trying to trade for, why was there not a stronger stipulation for playing time based on the compensation for the draft pick? Here's a guy that you could say he's at an age now where he might miss a lot of time. And you're still going to give up a 2 for that? So if the Jets would have said, look, you only get the second rounder if he plays at least 25% of the snaps, really you should have said 50. But even with a number that low, you wouldn't have had to give up that 2. And people got on me at the time. He's an Iron Man. He's this. Listen, and I said it the other day, Brett Favre was an Iron Man until he got here, right? And what happens? Tears his bicep. Plays through it, but plays like garbage. Aaron Rodgers comes here, Iron Man, 4 snaps in, pops his Achilles. So yeah, I mean, any 40-year-old quarterback, I'm gonna be worried about their health. It's not a Rodgers thing; it's an age thing and taking a beating back there thing. Even with the way they've changed the rules to make it nearly impossible to hit the quarterback. That's something Jets fans might get. That might be something to get used to this year. We might see roughing the passer calls. That would be nice. So let's see if there's anything else in the chat to go over. Yes, Chris Hansen. That's Elon knows it. The Catch a Predator television series. He is not on the Jets. That would be quite the career change. Conklin will have a monster year. I don't disagree, and it's time to get Jeremy Ruckert involved. It's time. I refuse to believe Jeremy Ruckert is not better than what the Jets have given him a chance to show. Jeremy Ruckert. And we said this when he was drafted. He didn't have a ton of production at Ohio State. But you look at the production he had. Look at the hands he showed off. I mean, they had a million weapons. It was Ohio State. Chris Olave, Garrett Wilson, Marvin Harrison Jr. Like, there's not a lot of room for the tight end to get 100 targets. And Ruckert is such a good blocker. That's how they used him. But Jeremy Ruckert can catch the damn football. Please throw it in his general direction, Jets quarterbacks. Nick Spano says Taylor and Braden have to be on the team. I agree. Like I said, Taylor, I think, is a lock. Being able to get that type of pressure on the interior, he's a lock. McGregor, they have other guys on the edge, but he will not make it through waivers. So if I'm making the 53, he's a lock. But with the guys they already have and with knowing Reddick, like if they know they've got something worked out with Reddick and he's going to be back in a few days, it's going to make it tough, but man, do I hope they keep that guy. Like I said, on my 53, if I'm picking the players, he's a lock. Don't want Mike White, the stench in the QB rooms. I just feel like he was, a not very good QB on a team that had a lot of not very good QBs. But as a QB3, like I said, if you got, again, I'm not talking about starting Mike White for 11 games and thinking you're going to get to the playoffs. I'm just saying if you need him for a game and a half to either hold a lead and win the following week, I think he can do that. I'm not sure you can trust the other guys to do that. And I think there are, like I said, we'll see who gets. Keaton Slovis got cut loose, which I saw as a little bit of a surprise. Would he push that trade? Yeah, I agree, Wild Wave. Something happened there. That was so, I don't know. I think that was probably, well, you can't really say it's one of Joe Douglas's worst moves. It netted him Aaron Rodgers. Like, let's be fair. But it still was, I thought. I mean, you can get Aaron Rodgers, but still overpay. And based on the fact that nobody else was calling, you overpaid. But neither here nor there. If the Jets win the damn Super Bowl this year, I'm not going to give a damn that they did that. And the Jets, by the way, I don't know if you guys saw this. Some Vegas odds came out the other day and had the Jets now as the odds-on favorite to win the division. AFC East against, with the Bills and Dolphins. Dolphins, I think, might be hurting a little on the O-line. They lost some bodies there. Bills lost everybody. But you got Josh Allen, so you got a shot. But yeah, Even though Aaron Rodgers missed practice that day to go to Egypt, all of a sudden Vegas says the Jets are the favorite to win the AFC East. We'll see what happens there. And I think that wraps up the 53. And again, I fully accept there might be a couple of, there generally we do see that, right? We see one or two where you go, oh my God, I really didn't think that guy was going to make it. And you'll see a couple of surprises. Let's see. Compensation exactly, Wild Wave. That was a big part of it to take on that deal. Now, listen, Rodgers took a massive pay cut, which was hugely appreciated. But and maybe they did talk about that, but I don't know that the Jets, I certainly didn't. Like that impacted my view of the trade as well at the time. I was like, you're taking on $100 million in salary and giving up multiple premium picks for a 40-year-old quarterback. Now, if you would have told me, hey, he's going to take a $35 million pay cut, that probably would have softened my stance a little bit. But let's see. All right. Yeah. So again, sorry, I'm checking the Jet Nation message boards again periodically to see if anybody gets cut, gets let go. Like I said, feel free to throw that in the chat. Aaron Wilson. Now, Aaron Wilson says Blades remains under consideration for a practice squad. Which I'd said, as a safety. But I mean, you could probably say that about every guy they let go. You can consider everyone. And real quick on Hassan Reddick, because let's see, Rich Samini, this is day 35 of the Hassan Reddick holdout, which ties the Darrelle Revis holdout in 2010. He has accumulated $1.75 million in mandatory training camp fines. Revis, a generational talent, certainly had more leverage. He did. You know why? Because the Jets didn't have a ton of depth with high-end corners. And you still would have wanted Revis. Don't get me wrong there. But this is the thing that Reddick is up against. And especially, I'll tell you what, week one, if Reddick isn't there and Takk McKinley gets a sack or Braden McGregor gets a sack or Will McDonald gets a sack or Jermaine Johnson gets a sack, or of those four guys, they managed to put together 3.5 sacks against the Niners. He's really going to start feeling the pressure because the Jets are already sitting back like, okay, just come in when you're ready. And we'll pay you what's left of your salary that hasn't been taken away in fines. His only hope, and I see people saying if the Jets lose week one and they don't get to the quarterback, they're going to have to panic and bring Reddick in. I don't think one game is going to change their entire philosophy. I mean, if they feel like they're good enough to get to the quarterback now, I don't think having a hard time getting to the quarterback in one game is going to make them think, oh God, we were wrong. We can't get to the passer. I think they'll be all right. And let's not forget that, with San Francisco, you're dealing with quite the innovative offensive coach who's going to try to find ways to, against this Jets pass rush, to get the ball out quickly, to negate what they do. And that's where it's going to be big on the linebackers and D linemen occupying, getting their hands up and occupying those passing lanes, try to get some balls off target. But yeah, to assume that the Jets are going to panic if they don't have 5 sacks week one, or if they lose week one, I'm not there with you. I don't think one game is going to shift everything. My Holy King said Jets will win because of defense. Now, do you mean in general or week one? Holy King. I think the Jets are going to win a lot of games, and I think it's going to be the offense and the defense is why. They're both going to be very good. There's no reason they shouldn't be. Again, week one. Okay, and I can see that. And I listen, I'm not one of these Brock Purdy haters. I think he's a solid player. But if Ayuk isn't fully prepared and McCaffrey's been missing some time, I don't see I don't know. I don't see it. I don't see the Jets not being able to shut them down defensively. And the pass rush is going to be fun to watch. The pass rush is going to be fun to watch this year in general because this team is going to have some leads. And that hasn't been the case in recent years. So that is it. I don't see any other cuts rolling in. Again, like I said, I mean, there were teams yesterday releasing lists like here's 10 guys that have been let go. And everyone does it a little bit differently. The Jets, up to now, only Al Blades has been announced. Purdy's overhyped. I don't know that I agree, my holy king. I don't. I think that guy, I heard that early on that first year when he starts 6-7 games, whatever it was, and he won them. And I'm hearing all this, oh, he's system guy, and I'm watching him make some pretty impressive throws. I'm watching him read defenses. I'm watching him look defenders off and hit receivers, and he's only gotten better. And you hear, what was it? Eric Galco, who runs the East-West Shrine game, talks often about how he received a text from a San Francisco 49ers coach that he knew, like within a day or two of him showing up to camp. And they were like, well, maybe it was early. I don't remember the time frame, but very early in 49ers camp, Brock Purdy's rookie year, because Galco was high on Purdy, messaged him and said, like, I think we got something in this kid. Like, there's something here. And there has definitely been something there. So I think he's a good player. I think obviously the 49ers, deep roster, but as we mentioned, guys who will be unprepared or haven't been to practice, haven't been working with the team, or have been missing time due to injury. Ricky Pearsall, you heard his name a ton on our Jet Nation podcast leading up to the draft. We all liked him, Chris Schubert in particular. But I think 2 years ago was the first time I watched Pearsall and went, oh, okay, here's a guy worth keeping an eye on. And he has absolutely been, he absolutely had a fantastic college career, ended up working himself into the first round with the Niners, who the Jets will play week 1, just a couple of weeks from now. And Holy King says, San Fran will make anyone look good. Well, we'll see. Trey Lance? Huh? They gave up like 5 first-round picks, and he couldn't even get on the field. And the guy who was Mr. Irrelevant is now the starter. So maybe not every QB. But that'll wrap this one up. That's the 53. They'll be rolling in throughout the day. If there's any big major news, we'll go live. Might even go live if enough cuts come in and the roster starts sort of shaping up, coming into form. So that'll do it for us on this one. Have a good one, Jets fans.